Hey there, welcome back to a very special edition of the Complicated Kids podcast. I'm your host, Gabrielle Nicolay. I am a toddler whisperer, a speech therapist, and a parent coach. And today I have my friend Sarah Wayland. Sarah, welcome back.
Thank you.
We are going to talk about a topic that you are working on actively right now. So I'm just going to preface this whole conversation on your behalf by saying this is not a fully formed idea, and except that probably most of it is, and that you're seeking input from the audience. And so
Yes.
as we're going along, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I have a story about that, or oh, I wish I could XYZ, we're going to invite you to, and we'll do all the contact stuff at the end, but Sarah is actively soliciting information and participation. Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome.
I'm in the exploratory phase and I have lots of ideas, but I want to make sure this is going to be useful.
Yeah. So, okay, the thing we're talking about, actually, sorry, you need to introduce yourself for the people who don't know you. Who are you and what
Oh,
do you do, Sarah?
my name is Sarah Wayland. I wear a few hats. First of all, I'm a parent. I have two neurodivergent kids who are now young adults. So I've been walking this path for a while. Um, I started my business 12 years ago to support parents who needed help navigating putting supports in place for their kids at school, at home, in the community, medical, whatever. So that I call neurodivergent care navigation. And then the other thing I do is parent coaching, and I use a very particular form of parent coaching called RDI, which used to stand for Relationship Development Intervention, but now stands for Relationship Based Dynamic Intelligence. It is a parent coaching model for parents of autistic kids. And the first thing we do is we work on reestablishing the guiding relationship. That's what we call it. And then we work with the kids to help them learn how to be problem solvers, to be able to have that dynamic intelligence that is so critical for being able to navigate adulthood.
And implicit in there is frustration tolerance.
Huge. Resilience is a big deal.
Yeah.
Oh, and I always forget to say this. I also am a co-author on two books called Is This Autism? One of them, the first one, the Green Book, is a guide for clinicians and everyone else. And the second one is a companion guide for diagnosing. The first one is the one most people want to read. And if you're a clinician, the other one is amazing. But anyway,
Those
so
are amazing resources that I have sent many people to.
thank you.
Yeah, no, those are a big deal because they're super functional. They're not jargony, um, and you can really get some like good information
Hey,
very
I'm so glad
easily.
to hear that.
Yeah,
That's wonderful.
yeah. Okay, so now we know who you are. I'm so happy always to talk to you. Let's talk about forever parenting, and before we launch into like how that is, let's talk about what that is. What is forever parenting the way that you are thinking about it, Sarah?
So these are parents who are going to have to be involved with their children's lives at a level that's way beyond what most parents are, of course, involved with their children's lives. But for some parents, the kid might be living with you for the rest of your life, or they might be living in their own place, but you are providing a ton of support. Maybe you are a guardian for them and they have support staff coming into the house. Maybe you are in charge of their finances because they just can't manage it. Um, there are all sorts of situations that can lead to that. So one situation is kids who are born with developmental differences, and you know early on, oh, my kid is going to need lifelong support. And so, as you're working through school and so on, one of the goals of school is to make sure you are prepared to support your child in that way, and that the child is prepared to live the life they want to live given the body they have. And so that's one group of parents. And these kids typically have pretty serious disabilities, usually a lot of vulnerabilities, maybe physical, emotional, cognitive, lots of different challenges in that realm. But it's pretty clear early on that something is up. Go
And those
ahead.
are genetic syndromes.
Yeah.
Like these are very obvious things from birth, is what you're talking about in this category. Yeah.
Maybe from birth or maybe from like 2 to 3, like a number of kids might experience a regression during that
Mm-hmm.
time. And so, but before they enter kindergarten, it's real clear that this kid is on a different developmental trajectory for sure.
The part I'm trying to weed out, and I just want to, I'll carve it out, are the neurospicy, autistic, ADHD, anxious kids who I don't want to put them in this forever
Right.
parenting bucket quite yet, unless and until we have to. So that's where I'm trying to do a little carve out here. Because
That is really important because that is my world. So both of my children are, I think my younger son, if I had been really understanding his situation, I should have known earlier. But, as I like to say, denial is just another word for hope. Um, and so, it took me a while to really realize how much he's navigating every day.
mm,
Even though he was in a non-public therapeutic school for kids with autism, like clearly he needed a mountain of support, but hope springs eternal. Anyway, so, but my older son is definitely this category you're talking about. So he's autistic. And the second category are kids who you knew stuff was up, maybe learning disabilities, ADHD. He was autistic but late diagnosed. You know, some executive functioning challenges, but I mean, they're smart. They got through high school with a diploma, maybe really good grades, maybe very good at school, but struggling with life and what they call those activities of daily living, so showering and chores and things like that, which it turns out are way more important than school, way more important, I have learned in hindsight. And so they go off and do whatever they're going to do after 18, and most of them kind of hit a wall because they're just not ready. And then they come back home, and then the parents are like, is this a forever thing? Or is this you just need a little more time thing? And we don't know the answer to that question, right? Because people grow and change for the rest of their lives.
okay, pause here, because what you're saying is really, really important, which is we don't know the answer to some things. Getting really comfortable with ambiguity is one of the parenting traits that is so necessary when you're parenting neurodivergent kids, because we don't know. If you get an autism diagnosis at 2, we don't know anything about
Mhm.
your life trajectory. We maybe know some big things, but we don't know specifics about your life trajectory. And there may also be year by year decisions, to your point just now, about like, we don't know what's going to happen next. If are you on the couch for good?
Yeah.
We don't know.
Right, right. And so my friend Monica Werner told me you have to plan for the worst and hope for the best. And what I found, the situation I found myself in with my older son was planning for a situation where he was quite disabled at this point, having gone to college, suffered terrible burnout, which it took years to recover from. And he's not recovered. I don't know that he'll ever recover, honestly. But is this lifelong disability, or is this something that he can, forge a new life for himself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the second kind of kid. Third kind of person is people who look like everything was going great, and then something happens. You're in a terrible car accident. you develop a mental illness that comes on in young adulthood, or seizure disorder that comes on. Those come on later, for some people, for most people, in late adolescence, early adulthood.
Mhm.
Psychosis, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, some of these very serious mental illnesses don't show up
Mhm.
in most people until then. So the parents thought things were going great, and then the carpet gets pulled out from under them and their child is, having to navigate this huge change in their circumstances. And you, as a parent, do not know what is coming.
Mhm.
And I want those parents to be part of the conversation too.
Mhm.
Again, planning for the worst and hoping for the best.
Mhm.
So forever parents are parents who are, and you've heard there's sort of those three distinct situations, but in any one of them, it really could be the case that your child will need a lot of support from you,
Mhm.
way more than most parents are having to provide.
Yeah. I want to talk about the types of support that parents might be needing. But before we do that, I want to talk about grief.
Okay. I've got a
Just,
whole section in the book on grief.
yeah, let's just keep it light and frothy, shall we?
So first of all, oh, go ahead. Go
No,
ahead.
no, go ahead.
So, do you know the book by Rita Eichenstein, Not What I Expected?
I don't.
It's a beautiful book. Absolutely beautiful book. The main one is Not What I Expected, and it's Help and Hope for Parents of Atypical Children. And she is a neuropsychologist, and she took Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's conceptualizations of, the phases we go through when we're facing a terminal illness. But in
Mhm.
this case, what we're facing is lifelong disability.
Mhm.
And we go through very similar stages. And so she just took those stages of grieving, which, we call them stages, which implies there's some kind of linearity to it, which is absolutely untrue. And Kubler-Ross did eventually say, yeah, I really, this is not a staged thing. It's messy, and we're always like going back and forth around in between them. But the stages of grieving, I'm trying to remember what the different ones are. So there's denial. I actually
Mhm.
just mentioned that one.
Anger.
There's anger. There's depression, bargaining, and acceptance.
Mhm.
And they've identified a sixth stage, which is making meaning.
Yes, beyond acceptance, there is making meaning. That's really interesting. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So those are, I'm definitely going to talk about those in my book.
Mhm.
I actually teach a class called First Put on Your Own Oxygen Mask, and that is one of the sessions, is going through this and just helping parents understand why they might be responding in a particular way. So I'll just take anger as one that can be pretty hard. Parents are angry because there isn't support and it isn't what they expected. And the anger can come out sideways in some ways that can really be hurtful. They
Mm.
might be angry at a teacher who's trying to help them. They might be angry at, God. They might be angry at themselves. Maybe something happened during the pregnancy that, whatever, or, they adopted a kid and didn't realize what they were getting into. I mean,
Mhm.
there's all sorts of reasons to feel anger. Sometimes the anger gets directed at a partner,
Mhm.
and sometimes it gets directed at the child.
Mhm.
And so anger, like understanding, oh, I'm having an anger and this is part of my grief and this is how I'm coping with it, can help you understand better why you're behaving the way you are, and to think, okay, is this really who I want to be? And I need to work through this anger, and, because that's my stuff, and, you know, do what needs to happen, which is not be angry at people who really didn't ask for any of this, right?
Right. And as you're saying that, I also want to put a caveat here, and no shame or shade if you're in the middle of some
Oh,
big anger. you will need to get to the other side of that, and you will have your process, and it will be very clear to you in the rearview mirror. But while you're going through it, it's just going to feel like you're mad all the time. And that's okay too, right?
Huge.
I mean, bringing awareness name it to tame it is the real thing. It's a fantastic tool, and it doesn't always end the experience. In fact, it probably almost never ends the experience.
Correct.
But it does bring awareness and help you move through it faster, perhaps. And also, there are people who really they want to hang on to it because it's fueling them, because it helps. They're in a space where it helps them get things done, perhaps.
Yep.
And that's okay. What we're not in the business of here, and Sarah, you do this so well, is we're not in the business of judging ourselves for how we feel.
Right.
Right?
Do you know Rumi's poem, The Guest House?
Yeah.
See, that I actually have that up in my house because it's such a beautiful poem.
Yeah.
And it gives you permission to have all those ugly feelings. And one of the things I do love about Dr. Eichenstein's book is she points out that those stages each have a purpose.
Yeah.
It's important to feel angry, right?
Yeah.
Of course you're angry, and it serves a purpose. And so if you don't let yourself feel the feeling, you don't get the benefit of the purpose. So I have learned, if I'm having a big emotion, I set aside time to wallow in it, because it's a messenger.
And this is something that we don't learn how to do. And our brains being what our brains are, our brains will tell us it's a terrible idea to wallow because
Right.
you might never crawl out of the hole.
People think that
They
all
do.
the time.
All the
Yeah.
time. It's a lie.
It is a lie. Yeah, I remember my father-in-law when my mother-in-law died, and she was young. She was in her 50s. And he was very sad, obviously. And we said, well, why don't you just give yourself permission to be sad? He could not tolerate those feelings of sadness. And I said, it's okay to cry. And he said, it is not okay because if I start, I will never stop. Untrue. Categorically untrue. But he had that story. He was telling himself about his sadness. And it made it harder for him to carve out time to remember her and to be sad about the fact that she wasn't going to be with him for the later part of his life, which he had been looking forward to.
Yeah.
And it's important to process that stuff. So, and it is not true that you will cry forever.
You just won't. It's physically impossible.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
But so to, bringing it back to sort of the parenting realm, right? Oh, right.
Oh, yeah, that.
Well, but listen, emotions are kind of the whole game in parenting,
Yes.
right? You learn how to face and feel and process emotion. You are winning because now you can handle anything that happens in your life, including a child who needs you forever.
Yeah.
You just can.
Yep.
But we tell ourselves a lot of stories about, I won't be able to handle it if, or I'll just die if he moves back home, or I won't know what to do. We tell ourselves these lies and then we believe ourselves and then we're afraid and then we suppress.
Yep.
And the shit happens anyway.
Right. Well, I always see the suppressed part. It's kind of like the gopher in Caddyshack. You bomb this hole and make sure that's all covered up, and then he pops up somewhere else, and you're like, gotta stuff that one down. It's over there, right? You're just constantly trying to get rid of it,
Yeah.
And it doesn't work.
No. It's grief is a companion.
Mm-hmm.
I happen to think that grief is a companion in parenting generally. It's just that if you're parenting more neurotypical kids, it doesn't happen till much later.
Yeah. That's what Monica says. She says, she had this phrase, all kids take it out of you eventually. Neurodivergent kids take it out of you sooner.
That is genius. I'm going to borrow that. That's fantastic.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So grief, yes. forever parenting, maybe. What are some of the domains that you're going to be looking into in terms of this forever parenting model situation?
So I'm pulling up my outline here, which is
Yeah.
why I'm looking up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to put it down here, but I have big areas. So one is just understanding all the different situations that people may find themselves in.
Mm-hmm.
I just laid out those three different trajectories that I've noticed. But there are cultural determinants, there are religious determinants that shape how you end up feeling about something.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one section. Then there's a logistics section where I talk about legal, financial, practical, medical, those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
Then I have a section on emotional well-being for the parent, emotional well-being for the adult child, self-regulation, a whole section on that, which initially I thought I wasn't going to include, but I had some friends read through the outline and they were like, why did you gray this out? This is the most important part.
Okay, let's pause
So,
there for a second then. What do you mean by emotional regulation for parents and adult children?
I do find that uh, when you are upset about something, so I like to talk about the rumble rage cycle, right? I'm all about the rumble rage cycle. And that was a concept that Brenda Smith Miles came up with for autistic kids in particular, but we all have a rumble rage. We all have it. And I think it's one of those cases where the autistic kids taught us about ourselves. So the idea is, you're fine, something happens, you start getting dysregulated. If you can figure out how to, address it, you go back down to being fine. If you can't, then you just get more and more dysregulated. Eventually, maybe you completely lose your marbles, and then you calm down and you come through a recovery phase and back to feeling okay. So that rumble rage cycle is something that we see in most people when they're upset. And, understanding, oh, like my husband knows for me, when I'm starting to rumble, he says, I can't hear him. So he will try to talk to me. And he says it's like I just look at him like a rabbit, right? And so then he realizes, oh, she's rumbling, and so we got to figure this out, except that I have a hard time talking during those moments too, which is physiologically reasonable actually. And so just recognizing that that's what's happening for yourself and that it's a normal process, so that you can anticipate, how am I going to deal with these situations when they come up, right? So if you have somebody who gets violent when they get upset about that, it may be that the way you deal with that is you lock yourself in the bathroom while they're getting violent, right? That might be, what you do. But just understanding how to address that and then figuring out what those triggers are so that you don't have to trip yourself into that mode all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is one thing I had to learn as a parent very early on. But in talking to people, I'm realizing that not everybody learned about that when their kids were children. So I think it's like part of what you learn when they're young, but I'm realizing there are many parents out there who never learned about that.
Yeah.
And you need to know what you're seeing, and you also need to know what you're feeling so that you can figure out how to navigate all that.
It's so interesting because this is a bit of a rant, but stay with me. So much of parenting is about compliance. And
Mm-hmm.
when kids are small and they rumble, we physically manipulate them or control them or make them afraid of us
Yep.
so that we get compliance, which we think looks like cooperation.
Yep.
We get confused about which one we have. And that, I think the parents who didn't learn early on about sort of emotional regulation, this piece of things, maybe that's a part of what was happening. And you maybe had a kid with a nervous system who could kind of manage it,
Mm-hmm.
and go along to get along to some degree at that point in time. when kids get older and then puberty starts happening and stress starts happening, and if we've got some
Yeah.
burnout happening, now they're bigger and louder and stronger and more stressed than you. And
Yes.
compliance based approaches will not work.
Right.
And that's why when I have parents of 2-year-olds in my practice, I try to get away from compliance as much as I can
Absolutely.
and go to, I mean, I'm not trained in RDI, but everything that you're saying earlier is like exactly what we're working on. It's like, how do we get this relationship back to where we understand the other and
Yeah.
what's happening here?
Yeah.
So that, again, so that number one, it doesn't escalate quite so much, or at least we are de-escalating as much as we can. And
Hmm.
then we're also understanding when things go off the rails, I got to keep myself safe. And I do go in the bathroom and I don't
Right.
fuss at this shouldn't be happening. Because that's
Yeah.
another piece of the whole thing too, right?
Yeah. And Gabrielle, your point about your kids get bigger is really important.
Mm.
So I actually know a woman who was killed by her adult son
Oh,
when he was having a rage. So this
oh,
is serious stuff we're talking about here. And parents are navigating living with somebody. And by the way, he doesn't know what happened to his mom.
oh,
He's not capable of understanding. That's the forever parenting piece. I want to make sure people know that it doesn't have to be like that, but you have to take this stuff very seriously because it is literally a matter of life or death.
yeah. Ooh. Okay. Um, that got
Okay.
heavy.
Yeah, sorry.
No,
But
no.
it's
This is
it's
why we're
it's
doing it.
one of the hardest things about working on this project, Gabrielle, is facing those hard realities.
Mhm.
So I'll tell you another story I just got this weekend. A friend of mine, his best friend had an autistic son, and he was so overwhelmed. His son is in his 30s. His friend got so overwhelmed that he ended his own life.
Yeah.
And so now my friend is caring for his best friend's son. So big emotions can have terrible outcomes.
Yeah. Yeah. And they don't have to.
That's right. That's right. And my friend said to me, he said, you have to write this book because my friend didn't have to die.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, we are skimming the surface, right? We're right up against, adjacent to I don't even know if it's a 30,000 feet view, maybe it's 100,000 foot view of how children and parents find each other, how they live together, how
Mm-hmm.
they
Yeah.
um, how they entwine their lives together,
Yeah.
um, and whether or not there is a larger purpose at work. We're right up against it, and we're not going to go over there. And there is this aspect. These are big questions about like, why me? Why this child? Why
Right.
this friend dying? That
Yes.
we can never know the answers to. And yet that hint um, well, here you are writing this book.
Right.
Right?
Because there is no book like this
Yeah.
for parents who are navigating this transition from school
Yeah.
where your kids really are legally entitled to get the support and help they need to a world where you have to qualify for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that process, that's a whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
I just realized that really has to be in the book, which is part of the legal and financial and, planning for what their life is going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry this got so heavy, but this topic is super heavy.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be. That's the purpose of my book,
Yeah.
is it doesn't have to be like this,
Yeah.
right? Even if your child needs a ton of support,
Yeah.
a lot of it is about the stories you're telling yourself about what's going on.
Mhm.
And so that's why I am collecting stories, because I want to hear them, and I want to hear what parents, what they want to know about. And I also want to know what they, if they're in, if they're navigating some of this and they figured something out that they
Mhm.
wish somebody had told them earlier.
Mhm.
I want to know, what
Mhm.
is it that you
Yeah.
learned
Yeah.
that people aren't talking about? I want to hear it.
When we shine light on a dark subject, if we want to call it that, we make it not be so scary, right?
Right.
It's like
Right.
those emotions. If we are willing to feel the feelings, they become less scary. If we shine the light on this topic, it will become less murky, less scary. There will be, you're writing the roadmap here. You and I could go all day, and we're going to pin it here for now.
Okay, good.
Okay. Because I think that's a beautiful place to end, which is an invitation for participation. If you've listened to this episode and you know somebody who has an adult child that they're taking care of, I hope that you will send it to them, because the next thing that Sarah is going to tell us is about your focus groups and things. Yes?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So I'm going to be running focus groups. I live in the Washington, D.C. area, and we have one focus group that's in person at DC Peers, which is in Washington, D.C., and it's dcpeers.org. Um, and we're going to run an in-person focus group there on December 7th, that's Sunday from 1 to 3. But I'm also running online groups, and I'll post the link. I'll give you the link, and you can post it in the show notes or whatever. But I'm running a series of focus groups the following week that are online on Zoom. And so I'm hoping to get input from people. Right now, my focus groups are aimed at parents. However, I want to interview people, like the disabled people who are the recipients of this support, to find out what they would like. I also I also want to interview people who have been supporting parents in this situation, to see if they have advice and wisdom to share with me as well. So if you're in those groups, just send me an email and say, I'm in one of those groups. I actually did put a link on my website. So if you go to my website, which is guidingexceptionalparents.com, there's Forever Parenting, you'll see as one of the titles. If you click on that, you'll see a link to sign up for all of these different focus groups. And the last link is if you're not a parent, can you just fill out this form, tell me what your role is, and I'll get back to you as soon as I get those focus groups set up. But
Perfect. All right.
yeah.
Well, you've got your work cut out for you. And thank you, because this is clearly so needed.
Thanks, Gabrielle. I really appreciate you using this platform as a way for me to reach more people.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Well, thank you. And again, if you're listening and you know somebody who you think should hear this, I hope you'll send them the episode. All right. Until next time. Thank you.